Okay, so it is now the end of Saturday for the Vintage Offroad Nationals 2025. So we did the more serious classes, two-wheel drive buggy, four-wheel drive buggy, and stadium truck. So that part's all done today. And I have all the footage. I'll upload that later after I sort through all the videos, but I figured once again I'll just do a quick recap for how the day went. Certainly did not go as planned. Um, so let's see. We'll start with two-wheel buggy. I ran the Traxxas TRX3 as I said I would yesterday. First round I put in pretty good run. It wasn't great, but it was decent enough. I think it got me, I was in like fourth in the A main after the first round. So it was a pretty safe position. And I figured, and we did 3 rounds of qualifying, by the way. So then I figured, okay, well, it's kind of a safe position. And there were like 52 or 53 two-wheel drive buggy entrants. So I thought it was pretty good. So then for the second round, I figure I can use that to experiment a little bit because as the track was starting to groove up, the surface was evolving. So I figured, okay, let me change the rear tires. So by the way, the front tires I was using J Concepts green ellipses. I found that those were giving me a bit more steering than the Proline transistors, which M4, which are a little narrower. So at least for that buggy, the wider front tread was helping a bit. And then on the rear, I was using Proline M4 transistors. Sorry, transistors? Positrons? Positrons. Sorry. No. Transistors, that's right. Those are the new tread. And those are doing fine. I, cleaned them, sauced them, let them sit for a bit, used them in the first round, they were good. And then I figured for the second round, I would keep the same front tires, and then I went to M4 positrons in the rear. So that's more like a straight bar tread, right? The transistors are an angled bar tread, just like ellipses. And the positrons are more like a straight tread. So you're going to get more forward bite, but you're going to give up a bit of side bite when you do that. But I figured, well, the track was starting to groove up, so maybe I could make that compromise and I'd be able to get away with it with how the surface was evolving. But no. The other weird thing is last year I ran M4 suburbs on my mid-motor double X and it felt really good. So I figured something like a suburb or a barcode or a positron would be good to bring back this year. And so I had a variety of tires. I brought suburbs, I brought the positrons, I brought green barcodes with open cell foams. I figured that would be kind of interesting to try. None of it really worked. None of it gave me decent side bite. So, and that was during open practice. So the positrons round two, it was like a throwaway round. The car was all over the place. I couldn't really do much with it. So I was just trying to hang in there. Did not improve on my first round run. Fine. Chalk it up to experience. And then for the third round, I went back to the tires I was using for round one. So that was front ellipses and then the rear positrons. By then, some folks were starting to use slicks. I generally stay away from slick tires on a surface like this where you have dust off the racing line. Although, I don't know, maybe like a ghosted Electron might be okay. But I felt like I was fast enough with the treaded tires, even as they were wearing in. It didn't seem like I was any slower than, third place, fourth place, sort of that kind of the guys that were running up there. So I didn't really see a need to go to slicks or anything ghosted. It seemed to me to be a little too risky to try for the third qualifier. So I stuck with the treaded tires. They were working well enough. And then I ended up qualifying fifth. Someone out qualified me in the third round. Okay. So then for the main, we did 10 car mains. Started in fifth, worked my way up to fourth, and then I was there for a couple of laps, and then I had a bobble. So then I fell back a little bit, and then I had many more bobbles, And by then, like by the middle of the race, my race was so far gone, I didn't really care. So I was just trying to see how much I can push the TRX3 to put in a hot lap. Um, and I ended up finishing dead last, almost dead last. One guy broke out on the second lap, but for the people that were still running, I finished dead last. Okay, fine. Um, Now, to a buggy, looking forward to next year, I think, given how the TRX3 performed last year, it did pretty well. This year, throughout open practice and throughout some of the qualifiers, it did well. Um, but I'm ready to try something else. So next year, certainly I'll bring the B2 back because I brought that this year, but I didn't run it for the qualifiers and mains. I ran it in open practice. It was pretty good. So I'd like to bring that back. And then the low C stuff, the double X, the mid motor double X, and maybe the Tekin mid motor as well. So that'd be 4 two-wheel drive buggies to bring for next year. That's what I'm thinking. So that's two-wheel buggy. Stadium truck. I ran the Kyosho Pro XRT. That did really well during open practice. So I figured it would do well for the qualifiers and the main. And then first round of qualifying, it was okay. It was not bad. I can't remember where I placed. I was like maybe 8th in the A main, so not great. Not and they were doing essentially 8-car qualifiers. So if I got bumped out of 8th place, then I would have been in the B qualifier, which ended up happening because in the second round, I tried doing something different with the rear tires. So in the fronts, I was running green barcodes with open cell foams. And then in the rear, I was running initially M4 electrons with closed cell foams. And then I switched for the second round to super soft, aka chain links with open cell foams. I figured the open cell would be interesting to try. The problem is the tread was also different. I went from electrons to chain links, and chain links are more like a bar tread. But it's not like a typical bar tread like a suburb. It's kind of like this almost circle bar tread. So I thought maybe it would be a bit more like an electron, but with a shallower tread, and I would be able to get enough traction with that, and then combine that with a softer insert, open cell foam instead of a closed cell foam, to maybe calm the car down a bit in the rear. It ended up doing the exact opposite, not because of the foam, but because of the tread. It behaved a lot more like a barcode in the rear or the positrons I ran in the rear into a buggy. It was just all over the place, very, very, very loose rear end. So, okay, throw that round away. And then for the third round of qualifiers, I went back to electrons in the back. And I also changed a little bit of the rear suspension geometry. I changed the roll center and camber gain a little bit. I figured, why not? Just try it out, see if it changes anything. I ended up in the B qualifier for the third round, and within the first few laps, my pace would have been good enough for second place in the A main, but then I made some mistakes and I progressively fell back. The car was a bit looser because I increased the rear camber gain and I dropped the roll center, so it gave me more cornering in areas where I really needed it. But it also made the car a bit looser in other areas, a bit sort of, I wouldn't say edgy, but a bit more slidey, a bit harder to handle. So I was kind of dancing around it. And then when the third qualifier started, I noticed the pinion gear was like grinding against the spur gear. And there didn't seem to be any problem with the mesh. So I figured, okay, well, let me just loosen the slipper and not overdrive the car, just try to like coast into turns and everything. And I sort of made it through the third qualifier. And then when I took the car off the track, I took a closer look at what was happening, and on hard acceleration, the spur gear was moving away from the pinion. So basically, I have to rebuild the gearbox. I'm not sure if this particular gearbox, I have a couple of different SST gearboxes where I played different games to reduce bind in the drivetrain. And I can't remember if for this one I used like the sort of floating top shaft concept that I talked about a few years ago in my SST videos. but I noticed it was doing more of that, and that's not something I could have fixed easily in the pits. So I figured, okay, put that aside. I'll bring the T2 back out and run that for the third qualifier, and sorry, for the B main, because I ended up qualifying second in the B main. And then if I can get through that, top two in the B, bump to the A, run it for the A main. I should have stuck with the setup I had last year. But when I put the truck down, I noticed I set it up for dog bones level, and it seemed to be a little bit low in the rear. So I raised the ride height to arms level in the back, thinking that would make it a little better. Had plenty of steering, but it was too loose. So it was also a bit of a handful. I could kind of dance around it, but it was hard to do it consistently. So okay, stadium truck didn't go terribly well. I ended up finishing second in the B main, like first and second place. The guy who wasn't first, we just kind of like talked to each other on the driver's stand, like, let's just cruise this out and make the A main. Let's not fight over position. Okay, fine, because we had a pretty big lead over the rest of the field anyway. So I started 10th in the A main. I think I worked my way up to maybe 6th place, just capitalizing on other people's mistakes. I had my own mistakes because, again, the truck wasn't exactly how I wanted it. But it was okay. It wasn't anything like how it felt last year when the truck felt insanely good and I ended up TQing and winning with the same exact truck. So, even though it's the same track, same surface and everything, you can have highly variant results. This year's no different. So next year, I will probably bring that back as my backup option, drop the rear ride height, and then maybe play around with some different tire options. I'd like to get some green ellipses or some more green ellipses to try. See what else I can find that works well. And of course, so that'd be the backup, and then I would bring the Low C Double XT as my front up option for next year. Put the Kyosho stuff aside. So then that leaves four-wheel buggy. So four-wheel buggy, so yesterday I said I was going to run the 95 YZ10 because it felt really good, and it did. But then I thought to myself, well, we have 2 hours of open practice, and I feel pretty confident going into the day. This was in the morning. So let me play around a little bit more with the Kyosho ZXS Evo. It's really just a front suspension problem that I was dealing with. It seemed like it was underdamped, so I tried different pistons, and sure enough, that sorted it out. It felt pretty good. I did a couple practice laps late in open practice, and it actually felt really good. So I was like, okay, well, why don't I just run this? I'll at least run it for the qualifiers. Then I can get some footage of the ZXS doing well, which is what I've been wanting to do for years. So let me just do that. So first round of qualifying, I I lost the spur gear. I noticed that it sounded like the slipper was slipping, and I wasn't getting a lot of punch or top end on the front straight. I was like, what's going on? And it made this sort of high-pitched sound like the slipper was too loose. So I took it off the track, and sure enough, the spur gear got all ground up. Somehow, I don't even know what exactly happened, but something really weird happened with the spur gear. And I basically just blitzed the whole thing. So, okay, replace the spur gear. I think maybe the pinion gear I had was just a little too small, and it was already all the way forward on the motor mount slots, and the mesh maybe was just a little bit off. That could have been what did it. So I went a little bit bigger on the pinion gear to give me margin to adjust gear mesh, replace the spur gear, and then round 2 of qualifying, the slipper was too loose. So I still didn't have any punch. So, okay, I put in kind of a slow run there. But then by the third round, I sorted out the slipper, and I put in a pretty decent run. I think I qualified 5th or 6th. It didn't feel quite as good as the YZ10, but it was good. So then I was thinking at the end of the third qualifier, okay, well, I can either run this in the A main as like the safe option and at least get more footage of the ZXS running, but pretty much guarantee to myself that I probably wouldn't get a podium finish, or starting from, was it fifth or sixth, I could take the 95 YZ10 out, which I know is more forgiving in certain areas of the track, and I could drive it more aggressively. Maybe I can work my way up to a podium position with that. Already ran it for practice yesterday, so I was confident that I could just put it down, having not run it all day, and get a good result. So I did that. And then the slipper was loose. What is this issue with the slippers? So it's really weird because the entire time I ran it during open practice, it was fine. There was no issue with the slipper whatsoever. And it's just stupid me. I should have checked before putting it on the track for the A main. But then, you know, I run like a practice lap. Like they allowed us to do one hot lap before starting the main. And I hear that, meh, like that high-pitched whine. Like, oh man, it's probably a loose slipper. But it's too late to change anything because they were running a fast program. So once you identify that there's a problem, there's really not any time to fix it. You have to just go through that round or that heat or whatever and then address it the next time around. But this is the A main. Like, this is the last race. So I just had to deal with it. So basically I had no punch, and it was a noticeable difference. Like coming off of corners, I had nothing. And I had to just carry as much momentum as I could through the sharper turns. So I ended up, yeah, it was another race I ended up finishing like down the order, you know, 6th, 7th place, something like that. I don't even remember. And it's a shame because if I had set the slipper correctly, I could have gotten a really good result with that. So, okay, going into next year, what do I want to do about four-wheel buggy? Well, I mentioned earlier I want to run all Losi next year, so okay, I'll bring the Losi stuff. But my backup will still be the 95 YZ10. I'm probably going to retire the ZXS, given, you know, for how many years that I've tried to run it. And, you know, it's good. But the Yokomo, I have more confidence with it, and I could push it harder. So I want to bring that back as my sort of typical backup option next year for four-wheel buggy, and just sort out the slipper, make sure, you know, everything's good to go. Yeah, so today, you know, my actual qualifying results weren't stellar. I'd say for two-wheel buggy was probably my best qualifying result. That was, you know, 5th place out of 50-something cars, so top 10% in a pretty fast field. So I can feel good about that. But the mains all went to shit. So I'm not really too upset about that, given that this is kind of a transition year as I'm trying to get the last sort of decent result out of this particular set of cars before moving on to a different set of cars. So I think with where my mind is right now, I'm kind of ready to retire a lot of these cars and move on to the Losi stuff and some of the, you know, the RC10 stuff that I have been sort of putting aside. So I'm ready to do that now. Now I may change my mind come June next year, but this is how I feel about it now. So yeah, tomorrow we have Classic 4-wheel buggy, Y2K buggy, and Classic. Classic 4-wheel buggy, the 94 YZ10. I have 2 YZ10s that I brought. That one should be fine. You know, I'll check it again tomorrow, check the slipper, make sure it's okay. That should be fine. So I get another shot with the YZ10. And then Y2K buggy, I'm going to run the RB5. I think I mentioned yesterday that that was doing really well, at least yesterday. The surface has evolved, it's grooved up a bit, so we'll see what the tires I have, whether it's still good. I expected it will be, though. And the Classic, I haven't put any laps on with the mid-motor madcap. So tomorrow, for the 2 hours of practice that we have, I got to try to get some time in there to just put some laps down and just make sure the car works. I did the same thing last year with Classic, where I didn't touch my dirt thrasher until the morning of you know, that Sunday, and trying to sort things out during open practice because I had all this other stuff to work through. So I'm cautiously optimistic for tomorrow, given the types of classes that we have tomorrow and how good at least 2 of those 3 cars feel. So hoping for a better result tomorrow, but we'll see. So yeah, that's it for now. Thanks for watching.